What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
Guys, we got a great midweek episode lined out for you today. Conor McGregor making his first statement since the unfortunate ending of UFC 329. He seems to be in good spirits, talks a little bit about what's next. We'll get into that. Khabib Nurmagomedov gave an interesting interview where he talked about how difficult Ian Garry is stylistically for Islam Makhachev, and also how he's feeling on the training mats right now compared to how he felt when he retired. So we'll get into a little bit of that as well. Of course, we have Colby Covington versus Arman Tsarukyan at RAF this weekend. Sure to be a banger. We'll break that down a little bit. And we'll finish the episode with a modified deep dive and predictions video for DDP versus Kamaru Usman coming up this weekend. As always, everything in the timestamps below, so if there's a particular topic that you're most interested in, you'll know where to find it. But I think, Nick, we should probably start today with Conor McGregor, right?
Sure.
He's still very much the most recent thing in the news cycle.
Yeah.
A lot of people want to know what's going on. We kind of were hoping to see a post-fight interview in the octagon. We unfortunately didn't get that. Instead, we got a very deflated and upset Conor McGregor walking out of the arena.
Right.
And then we didn't hear from him for a couple of days, other than a couple of tweets where he said that he's not going to fall back into his old ways. He's not going to fall into temptation, and he'll be back. So he had his birthday was, yesterday, I believe. And so he put out a video for his birthday. He seems to be happy. It sounded like it was Dee, his wife, in the background recording. And he said, look, guys, I'm in good spirits. I'm going to heal. Today is my birthday. I'm going to stay the course. And the most important thing he said in the whole video was, I will be back.
Yes.
And so, obviously he has one more fight on his deal. He's going to fight that. He's made it very clear that he's going to fight the deal out, and then he's going to see what free agency gives him. He'd like to end his career in the UFC. If the money's not there, he's certainly happy to go elsewhere, maybe to boxing, maybe to MVP, who knows, maybe to bare knuckle. But wanted to get your thoughts on his birthday video. Do you think that he's telling the truth, that he is in good spirits, that he's not going to spiral, that he will be back? And what are your thoughts overall on where he goes from here?
Yeah, it's nice to see a fighter like Conor McGregor, who suffered arguably the worst, defeat in main event UFC history this past weekend with Max Holloway. It's nice to see him, get right back into the social media. Obviously, we all knew with the Mac energy drink that he was kind of soft launching during fight week, that he couldn't just disappear forever, right? He has a multi-million-dollar business that he's about to launch right off a fight, that he was supposed to have. And of course, the fight didn't go his way. The night didn't go the way the fans were expecting, but he still has a job to do. And I just like to see Conor understand that, where he is in his career isn't exactly where he wants to be, or certainly not where he was before the long layoff. But I don't think we should say he can't fight again. I don't think we should just go ahead and force a man into retirement. I think there's a real itch that he wanted to scratch with the return against Max Holloway, and that got robbed of him, right? He had the soft launch, if you will. Like, he got to feel the fight week. He got to do the somewhat of a weight cut. He got to even make the walk, right? You hear the foggy dew hit the speakers, but then you don't actually get to do the competition. The first kick that he throws tears his ACL or tears his meniscus, and then it was basically all over there. A lot of class too shown by Max Holloway. But I think that Conor does need to either fix his knee with rehab or fix it with surgery. I don't know exactly. They didn't tell us. He didn't mention what the injury was. So obviously he knows, and they've got a plan moving forward. But I don't think that, even though he was saying that April is too far away for him to make a return, and then people were saying it's not April 2027 that he has to fight, but anytime before then is when he has to fight. I honestly think now that's about the earliest we could see him. But after what happened with Max Holloway, I don't think we need to force Max into another fight with Conor. I think we should go Michael Chandler, Conor McGregor, and let both of them ride off into the sunset afterwards. Max Holloway has a win over the the current champion right now in Justin Gaethje, and Justin kind of feels like he's in a position, just from the outside looking in, that he doesn't want to deal with any rematches, right? So that takes Ilya and Paddy off the board, who are two of the top guys in the division. Obviously, Conor's not getting that fight. And then Charles Oliveira, obviously we all love him. He's a great fighter and can probably, have a very competitive match with Justin Gaethje for a world title. But I don't know if the UFC is going to want to go in that direction, right? We saw how they felt about the BMF. So I worry that Charles Oliveira has sort of isolated himself and taken himself out of undisputed ranks, but he is going to have to take somebody on for the BMF title. So that leaves you with Arman Tsarukyan for Justin Gaethje. And is Arman Tsarukyan really enough of a legend to get a guy like Justin Gaethje to come back? Because it felt to me like Justin was more looking at fighting a legend, right? I think he had his eye on Max versus Conor, and he probably had his fingers crossed that Conor would be the one to win so he could have red panty night, have likely an easy title defense, and then he could retire the same night as Conor. But obviously that's out of the picture. So I would assume the next best option for him is to get his lick back on Max Holloway, who beat him at UFC 300, best knockout of all time. So I don't know where Max fits into another trilogy or a third fight with Conor McGregor, but I don't think it makes that much sense. I think Max is too close to undisputed and having another opportunity at that to sit on the sidelines. He took no damage, right? The fight didn't last long enough for him to even get touched by a glove. And I just think that Max should move forward looking at himself as a top rank 155er. Yeah. And Conor should look at, I got one more fight left, and then I'm going to go test free agency. There's a whole lot of options for him once he is no longer signed to the UFC. And I don't think the UFC wants to keep him around. I don't think they would renegotiate, regardless of an outcome against Michael Chandler, for a 4-fight deal, right? I think Conor's got one more good fight in the UFC, and then they'll let him go do whatever he wants outside of the UFC.
Yeah, I don't think that the UFC's appetite to re-sign Conor is going to be immense after this last fight, because he's going to be pushing 38 years old. It was a birthday video, right?
Right.
Born in 1988, and so likely he'll be pushing or already have turned 39 by the time he finishes out his final fight on the contract. You just think a knee injury, you kind of just slap a 1-year return sort of thing on it. 9 months to get to where you're fully back to 100%, and then a 3-month training camp brings us to about a year. Right. So Conor McGregor looking to be 39 years old or close to it by the time he steps back in there. And then what you're looking at, staring down the barrel of his 40th birthday if you renegotiate a 4 or 5 fight deal. Right. There's just not enough gas left in the tank.
He'd be 45 by the time that contract was over.
Exactly. And Conor commands so much money. I mean, there's the name is drawing I'm drawing a blank on the name right now, but there was a guy that our friend Mana fought in the UFC that was in his 40s. Italian fella.
Guido Canaletti or something like that. Yeah.
Conor's making more than Guido. Yeah. So they can afford to have a guy who's in his 40s on the roster who's fighting on the prelims. Not so much when you're talking about the highest paid person in the sport. Exactly. And so Conor, we're looking at Michael Chandler. I think it's only fair for Mike, right? Yeah. Mike's even though his record sucks in the UFC, he's a company man. Or the Nate Diaz trilogy. I mean, Nate looked horrible against Mike Perry. And I'm not trying to say that to be insulting. I'm just saying what I saw. He didn't look good at all. He looked gassed. He didn't look like he had trained properly. And so when you start to think of the level of competition that Conor really needs, that's unfortunately where it is. And Max didn't get a chance to really show much and put on a masterclass. But I feel like we all kind of thought it was heading in that direction.
He was the favorite for a reason.
Exactly. And so Max and him are on different directions. Now, does Max get an immediate matchup with Justin Gaethje? I don't know. Ali Abdelaziz came out and tweeted saying the champion's next fight will be against somebody he's never fought before. Now, is that just Ali, playing around on Twitter, stating the obvious that Islam Makhachev is fighting Ian Garry?
Yeah.
Or because he didn't say who, right? And he represents 2 champions, Justin and Islam.
Sure.
So, or is he talking about Justin? And if he's talking about Justin, then he must be talking about Arman, because Justin has fought Charles, he's fought Max, and he's fought Patty and Ilya. Yeah. So if Justin does have an opponent lined up that he's never fought before, that by default pretty much brings it down to Arman Tsarukyan.
Unless they're somehow going to bring Rufy in. But again, I don't think Rufy...
They're too. But Rufy doesn't jump Arman.
He's too far out of the line. And I understand if they were going to give Justin Gaethje a Max Holloway, or oddly a Conor McGregor, or anything like that because he doesn't want to do rematches. But you can't jump Arman Tsarukyan if you're Mauricio Rufy. And a lot of people have complained that Arman hasn't done enough work for a world title. Well, Mauricio Rufy's most impressive win is Michael Chandler. So at the same time, BSD, I guess, too. But the most recent one was Michael Chandler.
No, BSD beat him.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
So my brain's all jammed up.
You just saw BSD get brutalized in your mind. You're thinking no, BSD won that fight.
Yeah. So even more of the reason to not give Rufy the title shot. But if it's Arman, I think that's a good fight. I hope Justin comes back and tries to defend against Arman. Tough fight for sure. And certainly he doesn't meet the requirements of being a legend in the sport. Maybe one day Arman will get there, but right now, not so much. So I don't know, but I just think that Conor McGregor should set his sights on a different opponent. I think it should be Michael Chandler. Nate Diaz hasn't shown a whole lot of effort put into recent years, right? It looks like he's training. I think he still does triathlons. I think he's still working. But that showing against Mike Perry was either Father Time just being like, hey, the show is absolutely over, or he was just phoning it in for a nice, easy paycheck. So I think that Conor and Nate could wind up in a trilogy at some point. I don't think the UFC needs to be the ones to put that on. I'd rather see Michael Chandler get the shot, and then maybe Netflix MVP brings Conor over for a whole bunch of money. Nate Diaz would likely train a little bit harder than he did for Mike Perry for that fight. Or we could even see them go over to boxing, right? I know Zuffa Boxing isn't about putting MMA fighters in there. They want to grow as a stable for boxers.
And they're signing the real talent. I mean, Dana White, I was just looking on social media before we started recording. Conor Benn versus Ryan Garcia is official for September 12th.
What a fight.
They got that. They've got Shakur Stevenson now signed. So it does seem like Dana's making good on his word there that they don't want to do the crossover sort of one-offs with UFC, because Dustin Poirier and Nate Diaz sort of worked out like, hey, we want to come over and do a boxing match on Zuffa.
Yeah.
And Dana was like, look, we're not doing that with Zuffa. And so, because that was the first thing that I thought was, and Dan Hooker even said this, if Conor's got bum legs, if he's got a bad, broke his shin bone, now he's torn his ligaments, he's had ligament tears before, it would make sense. Conor's, a guy who uses his hands.
Yeah.
He's boxed before against Floyd Mayweather. Dare I even say bring Floyd into Zuffa and do Conor Floyd 2 in Zuffa.
100%.
Now, will Dana White make an exception to not doing the one-offs for that? Yeah, he will. So, I don't know, maybe there's some angle there, but all in all, I'm glad to see that Conor has not yet spiraled out of control. He seems to be, I told you guys I was going to stay on the straight and narrow. Today's my birthday. I'm drinking an energy drink. I'm not drinking proper 12. And, I'm happy to see that.
Yeah, he did a little taste test with D. But yeah, I think that Floyd Mayweather versus Conor McGregor in Zuffa Boxing is actually a perfect way for Conor to move out of the UFC. I think he does one more with Michael Chandler and then moves on, because Floyd Mayweather needs money. Conor McGregor wants to scratch the itch of competition. And everybody knows that the biggest fight of all time was Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather. So why not try to drum up some more attention? Both guys are much older than they were back then, and it wouldn't be nearly the high level boxing match that it was back then, but it would still be entertaining. It would certainly garner a lot of attention. And even if big names like Nate Diaz and Dustin Poirier can't get Dana to budge about Zuffa bringing MMA fighters over, Conor versus Floyd would absolutely be something Dana would entertain. And if he did that, the biggest boxing event of the entire year would belong to Dana White. It would belong to Zuffa Boxing. So I don't really see that happening this year, but I think Floyd Mayweather will be looking for some competition. Obviously, he wanted to fight Mike Tyson this year. That fell through. There were rumors about Manny Pacquiao. That fell through. I think there was one other guy.
Some Greek fella.
Yeah, that fell through. So I think Floyd is looking for a way to line his pockets, and Conor McGregor's the perfect guy to do that with. They, if history repeats itself at all, they'll both have a very lucrative night of business. But Conor just needs to focus on getting better and getting one more UFC fight. And then from then on, we get everything we need. A proper retirement, a proper, exit, bow to the audience for one final time. The Foggy Dew hits the UFC speakers, hopefully T-Mobile Arena again. But I just think that Conor and his days in the UFC are limited. He's got one more fight left. And then I don't think his competition days are over, because there's a whole lot of fun options. But I agree, boxing is probably an easier thing for Conor to train for, right? So in MMA, you got to be working your grappling, which is exhausting. And then in the evenings or whatever, however your schedule works, you got to work your Muay Thai and your kickboxing and your clinch work, your cage work. Everything that goes into an MMA camp is brutal. And he's training right now for main events, which means 5 rounds, which is even more difficult to train for than a 3-round MMA fight. So I think Conor taking all of those other weapons off the table and just focusing on boxing isn't what all the fans want to see, but it would be easier on his body. A boxing training camp is not near as hard as an MMA training camp, and he could probably get through it unscathed, with the bum knee that he has, the bum leg, everything that is a bother to Conor would basically be negated if he were only training for boxing. So I kind of want to see him go that direction, give everybody one more wild one-off event like a Floyd versus Conor, and I think that the fans would certainly show up and show out for that.
Yeah, I think so. There's definitely a few options for McGregor there. Let's move into now Khabib Nurmagomedov. So he gave a really interesting interview. Quick break in the action, guys, to thank today's sponsor, Kalshi, the predictions markets where you can trade on real-world events, including MMA fights. And what Nick and I love most about Kalshi is that the lines move based on what you guys, the fans and the experts, think is going to happen, and they're not affected by online bookies. And as a special thank you to the Barnhill Brothers listeners, Kalshi is giving you $20 to predict with once you download the app, use the promo code Barnhill, and deposit $20 of your own. So if you think you know MMA ball, stop talking about it and put a little skin in the game with Kalshi. Thanks so much to them for being today's sponsor. Back to the video. That I've seen parts of it. I've not seen the whole interview because I've not seen the full thing translated into English, but I've seen clips that are translated into English. And one of the most interesting things, there's 2 things I want to talk about specifically. I'll get to thing 1 first and then get your take, and then I'll talk about the other. The first is him talking about Islam Makhachev and the difficulty that Ian Garry brings to the fight as an opponent. Now, I don't disagree with Khabib, but Khabib's a pretty candid guy. He speaks his mind, he talks how he feels, and he shoots it straight. And he said, look, this is a difficult fight for Islam. We've never fought somebody this tall, right? Because we're now at 170. Jalen Turner may have been the only person 6'3" that I can think of at 155, but Islam Makhachev does not fight people that are 6'3" often. He said that he uses range really well. He moves around a lot. He makes himself hard to grab. And so he said, on top of that, Islam is pushing 35 years of age. And we're going to have to chase him down in this fight a little bit. We're going to have to be a little bit more aggressive than we've had to be in the past because we need to get our hands on him. That's our best way to victory, is to get our hands on Garry and get him to the ground and let Islam do what he does best.
Right.
Want to get your thoughts on that. Now, could Khabib be saying that because he's trying to build the fight? Now, Khabib is he's a straight shooter, but he's also a promoter. He's also a showman. He's had his own MMA promotion before. Is he trying to build some excitement? And, dare I even say, when Islam makes it look easy against Ian Garry, it makes it look all that much more impressive. You mentioned Floyd Mayweather in the prior segment. Floyd used to do that with opponents. He'd be like a minus 2,000 favorite, and he's like, man, this is the toughest opponent I've ever had. I could lose this fight. Like, this guy could knock me out.
Laughing all the way to the bank.
Yeah, now, is there a little bit of that going on? I don't know. But I do agree that Garry is not an easy opponent for Islam. Ian Garry's going to bring some wrinkles and complexities to Islam Makhachev that he's not had against any opponent before.
Yeah, I'm really excited for Islam versus Ian because Ian is so good at winning the early rounds using that range management and using every square inch of the cage. He does a great job at staying behind a jab, and he'll throw kicks, but he doesn't overthrow. And he's a very intelligent fighter, high fight IQ. I don't think he is unaware that grapplers love to get a hold of a leg. And if they can get one finger on your leg, they can likely turn that into a takedown of some sort, or at least get you up against the cage. So I would assume that Ian Garry's kicks are going to be limited in this fight, but we saw the exact same thing with Khamzat Chimaev and Sean Strickland. Now, Sean Strickland is also a very high IQ fighter. He's a little bit more of a reckless individual than Ian Garry, but still, what he did against Khamzat was very impressive, and I think Ian should take a page from that book. He is known for his push kicks, teep kicks, right? If you think about anybody that makes memes about Sean Strickland, they're marching their legs and they're throwing straight punches, right?
Yeah.
And I think that the fact that Sean Strickland showed us basically all hands, about 90% hands, and he'd throw the kicks in when the time was right, when he knew Khamzat wasn't in a place where he could either catch the kick or close the distance on an unbalanced Sean Strickland who was on one leg. So I think that Ian Garry might have to look at that tactic and bring that into the fold for this Islam Makhachev fight, because if he's able to keep Islam at bay for the first couple rounds, I really do think the lines will sway a bit and go towards Ian. Now, I don't think he'll wind up becoming the favorite or anything like that, but Ian definitely has a chance to kind of get a good head start on Islam, who is good at getting the fight where he wants it, which is primarily on the ground. But he's not the kind of guy that sells out for a takedown immediately, right? He's not like Khamzat Chimaev, who will send a head kick 5 seconds into a fight and then he's on your legs. Like, Islam's confident in his striking skills. He's confident in his abilities on the feet. And I think he's going to be willing to trade a little bit with Ian Garry, and that could put him behind on the scorecards. But I also have seen Ian Garry fade a little bit. When you're such a reactive fighter and you have to keep distance from your opponent, you wind up moving backwards more than forwards, and that's exhausting, right? If I ask you to go walk a mile right now and do it the most efficient way you can, you're going to walk forward. You're not going to walk backwards.
I look pretty crazy walking a mile backwards.
Yeah. Remember there was a guy in our old neighborhood that used to walk backwards?
I do remember that.
That was crazy, but a topic for another conversation. But Ian Garry's going to have to move backwards, and also when you're reacting to everything to preserve your range away from your opponent, you do wind up getting a little bit more exhausted, because everything they're doing is predicating what you do and how you react. So Islam won't be as tired for the championship rounds of this fight, which I fully anticipate seeing between these two. But I think it's one of those situations where round 3 for Ian versus Islam is going to be very important, because I see Ian Garry having his style, come out on top for the first couple rounds, and his ability to be fresh and move and stick and move and keep Islam away from him work for about 10 minutes. And then I think for sure we can see Islam have a lot of success in the championship rounds, getting Ian to the ground and finding his preferences and what Ian likes to do, and exploiting those and getting him up against the cage finally and working his submissions or whatever it is he wants to finish the fight with. But that round 3 is what makes things very interesting to me, because Ian's still relatively fresh there, but Islam has collected enough data in that amount of time to make him pay for it. And I think this is going to be an interesting fight. So Khabib is right on the money with thinking this could arguably be Islam Makhachev's most difficult title fight of his career.
Yeah, and the other really interesting thing that I wanted to bring up that Khabib said was that basically, to paraphrase it, fighters train differently when they have an Islam Makhachev fight on the docket.
Sure.
And he basically said, the interview was like, well, what do you mean exactly by that? And he said, well, if you beat Islam, you're a superstar.
You're pound for pound number one.
Yeah, Islam's the number 1 pound for pound fighter in the world right now. A lot of people think he's making a quick march towards being the greatest mixed martial artist of all time.
Sure.
There are a small segment of people that believe he is already the greatest mixed martial artist of all time. So if you can get a win off of Islam, it hasn't happened in a decade, and he got knocked out here in Houston, randomly enough. If you can get a win over him, you can become a mega star.
Yeah.
And Ian Garry also has all of the makings of a mega star.
Sure.
He's, except for maybe you could make the argument that he doesn't have the finishing rate of like a mega star.
Yeah.
But that's being kind of nitpicky, right? So everything that Ian Garry brings to the table alludes to the fact that he's young, he's good on the mic, he's sharp looking, he's got people that hate him because of his family stuff, and all. You want a balance of love you and hate you type of thing. So
he's shown up every single time he's gotten into a UFC cage, and he only has that one loss to Shavkat, but that was very close and competitive, and it was a fun fight. But every time Ian Garry's on the docket, we can expect a high level mixed martial arts fight.
Totally. And so I think Khabib is right. A win over Islam with a character like Ian, he's your next superstar.
Yeah.
So, I do believe that Khabib has a point that people do train differently when they have him or Islam, or if you're over in PFL, Usman, whoever. If you have a Nurmagomedov or somebody from that camp on the docket, you take it a little bit more seriously, you add a little bit extra into training, and you come into the fight a better fighter. So there's that. The other thing that was funny that Khabib said was that, and this is the perfect segue into RAF, and that's why I wanted to wait to do this until we were about to switch to the RAF topic, because who could they possibly sign that would be bigger than Khabib? Now, he said, when I retired back in 2020, I was not in my prime yet. And as far as wrestling is concerned, I'm way better now than I was back then.
Insane.
And we all know how good his grappling was back then. So do you think that Khabib is done competing? Now, I know he's done with MMA, and a lot of people have pushed, he's got to come back. He's just one more. He's not going to do it.
I even heard Turki Al-Sheikh, or maybe it was just a rumor, but that somebody like Turki Al-Sheikh is willing to put on, who it was? Rainbet. It wasn't Turkey. It was Rainbet, saying they're willing to put $500 million on the line to run back Conor versus Khabib in MMA. Now, if both guys get $250 million, I hope Khabib is willing to take the offer and just go ahead and make his record a clean 30-0.
I don't think he will. No. I think Khabib is not moved so much by money. He's moved by his faith, by his family, and he also is rich as can be.
Yeah.
Like Khabib is worth a ton of money. And the reality of it is, he promised his mom he was done doing MMA.
Sure.
That book is closed. Could he wrestle again? Could he go do 3 2-minute rounds where he's not punching people? He doesn't really have to cut weight. They give him an Arman or a Colby Covington or a Hamzat or something like that. I don't know, maybe, but that's the segue that I have into RAF, because I think Khabib would be by far the biggest signing that RAF could ever do.
Can you imagine?
And there's a lot of people that we would love to see him wrestle against,
yeah.
But the wrestling match that we have on the docket for this weekend may be the biggest one that RAF has put on yet. Is now not as far as accolades. We've had multiple Olympic champions.
Yeah.
Now with Gable Steveson and Henry Cejudo.
And Kyle Snyder and Sudalayev fought this past weekend. So.
Yeah, so as far as pedigree is concerned, Covington versus Arman is not the highest level. But as far as star power goes, you better believe that Chaos Covington versus the Armenian Batman is the biggest fight that RAF has put on to date.
Yeah, and I love that RAF is actually bringing these high-profile names from MMA over. It keeps everybody entertained, right? We get to see Arman compete 2 weekends in a row. Last week it was in Georgia. Next weekend will be, or this weekend coming up will be in Milwaukee. So we get to constantly see their training and their competition, all the stuff that we want to see out of fighters that we only get 2 or 3 times per year out of especially the big names, right? They aren't fighting as often as a Merab Dwalishvili. So Merab's like the one anomaly there where he'll wrestle, 8 weekends out of the year, and he'll also fight 4 weekends out of the year.
Yeah.
He's just different. He's the machine for a reason. But I think Arman versus Colby is a wonderful fight, and it's great for these wrestlers who aren't as well known to the MMA fans, right? If you keep up with Olympic wrestling, you know everybody on the RFA cards. If you keep up with college wrestling, you know everybody on those cards. But not a lot of people keep up with wrestling as a pure sport. So bringing Arman and Colby in and these other big names, it's a great way to highlight these guys, because you know us, we don't miss an MMA fight, but I'm at a point now where I don't miss an RAF event. And it's not because I have to see how these Olympic level and college level wrestlers are doing. I tune in for those guys because I'm interested in seeing how they go, but I'm more tuning in for Arman Tsarukyan and Colby Covington, all the big names that they've got, even Henry Cejudo and Merab. That was super insane. Probably the wrestling match of the year. Probably the most entertaining wrestling match I've ever seen was Henry Cejudo versus Merab this past weekend in Georgia. Merab was down 8-0, ends up winning the match. I don't know what the final score was, something like 14-9 or 14-11, something. But either way, it was really entertaining. And the more stars that RAF can bring into the fold and show these people their talent underneath the UFC stars, the better the RAF future is going to be. But I can't wait for Arman versus Colby. Colby has shown a lot of good wrestling skills ever since he kind of retired and stopped fighting in the UFC. And
beat Chris Weidman, another All-American who was the entire career 15-pound weight class heavier than Colby.
Yeah, and I gotta bring up Chael Sonnen's saying that he brings up all the time. The most difficult guy to wrestle against is the guy one weight class below you. Now, you just said Colby beat Chris Weidman. In the UFC, they were one weight class separated, and Colby was the smaller man. He just beat him. So Arman Tsarukyan is Colby's next opponent. And if what Chael says is true, then Colby's most difficult opponent is going to be Arman Tsarukyan. I can't wait to see how it goes. Arman has been just mercy ruling everybody that he's touching on the wrestling mats. And I understand he's not fighting the best wrestlers in the world, but he is fighting people who have wrestling backgrounds. You know, think about the Giorgio fight. Obviously, he's not an Olympics wrestler or anything like that, but the kid can wrestle. He's got a challenge online, take me down, win $1,000. And I've seen probably 100 of those videos. I never saw anybody take him down until Hamzat's teammate recently, who's like 20 years old, came in there and just took him down at will as many times as he wanted to and made it look really easy. Now he did have the wall to work with, which is a different sport all in all than what Giorgio's used to.
Did he get $1,000?
I don't know if Giorgio paid him, but if he pays him per takedown, he owes him about $4,000 or $5,000. So very impressive young kid. You know, the stable of guys coming out of Chechnya and Dagestan and all the Caucasus region is just locked and loaded. They're going to keep sending so many guys to the UFC, but it's really cool to see their wrestling on display as well. So Arman being able to compete as often as he can in the RAF wrestling realm is great, because we know that Arman isn't ducking competition. We know Arman wants to fight in the UFC. We know he wants a title fight. We know he's down for a BMF fight. But in the meantime, because the UFC is kind of shelving him right now while they wait for the dust to settle at 155, they got to find out if Justin Gaethje wants to fight again. If he does, who does he want to be against? And I kind of understand where Justin's like, look, if it's going to be Arman, I'll just give you the belt. I don't really care to beat Arman Tsarukyan. I'd rather fight a Conor McGregor or a Max Holloway or another legend like that. So I think the UFC is holding out on Arman in a title shot or even just a return to the cage, because they want to see what else shakes out at 155. But I love that Arman Tsarukyan staying this active and consistent on the wrestling mats. And oh, by the way, since his last fight in the UFC, he's had like 9 or 10 events, and he's won every single one of them and barely had any points scored on him the entire time.
Yeah, and that's both submission grappling and wrestling.
That's right.
I think Colby's going to be his toughest test yet. If he can get in there and defeat an All-American wrestler who built his UFC career around his good wrestling base, that's going to be really impressive. I don't know if I'm making a prediction. I mean, it's hard to predict against Arman, isn't it? Because he just wins everything. He shouldn't, on paper, Colby should win this.
Right.
But, you know, I feel like Arman's younger. He's fresher. He seems to have this energy about him that can't be beaten right now. So I guess I'll go Arman Tsarukyan.
Yeah, Arman Tsarukyan is going to beat Colby Covington, but he's not going to shut him out like we've seen in the most recent RAF matches. I do see Colby landing a few nice techniques and getting a few points on the board, but I got to go back to what Chael Sonnen said. The guy in the weight class just below you is going to have a slight speed advantage. He's going to be a little bit more agile. He's going to be able to show you feints. And Colby Covington is a little bit older, right? So he's not, even though he's been looking great in RAF, he hasn't been looking quite as good as Arman. Arman's shots, you know, this past weekend when he was wrestling that guy in Georgia, just look at how he enters for his takedowns. And he's very persistent, right? If he misses the first one or you do a good job defending it, he's not waiting a long time. He's getting right back on the offensive and going again. And every time he goes out there, there's a highlight reel moment. Now, a lot of times we're ending up talking about him punching Giorgio in the face or throwing Uriah Faber off the mats. This past weekend didn't really have anything, you know, out of the ordinary for a wrestling match, but we did see some really cool techniques from Arman. So I've got Arman winning this one. I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult than his most recent matches, but I still see him beating Colby Covington.
Well, there we go. And let's move into this weekend's activities, the MMA activities, not the wrestling activities, which is what our bread and butter is. We love RAF is kind of becoming a big talking point for us because it's making such a big splash right now.
But RAF stands for Real American Freestyle, and UFC OCK stands for something else. So we got to get into that main event.
Yeah, they abbreviated that, didn't they?
I'm glad you got that.
I was going to say, did he say that right, or did he intentionally?
No, I'm not
say
dyslexic.
It the way the UFC
I'm not
said
dyslexic, but that was hilarious.
That was a good one.
And sometimes I think about like the editors and people that work for the UFC. Like, okay, you have this opportunity, and we know because Chris is our editor, and he's like the funniest guy that we know. Like, okay, you have UFC, OKC. What can I do to make this thing viral? It's only a fight night, so what can we do to really drum up some attention? I don't know if it was intentional or truly just a miss, but it was worth a laugh for sure.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to say it on camera, but if you switch the K and the C and then put UFC in front of it, spell it out for yourself.
There you go.
But anyways,
the ultimate fighting something.
DDP, Kamaru, Usman, both guys almost a 1-year layoff.
Yeah.
Both guys, both guys in different places of their career, right? Both guys are former champions. Usman had a longer run. He's more cemented as a GOAT of 170, probably number 2 to George St. Pierre. DDP, had an impressive run to the title, had a controversial win of the title over Strickland, had a nice defeat of him, and then was soundly beaten by Khamzat Chimaev. So he's looking to claw his way back up. One interesting thing that Dricus said in the build-up to this was, I actually wanted Kamaru because I knew Kamaru wanted one more run at the title. I knew they were probably going to do it at 85 because 70 is so hot right now. And I asked for him because, I was exposed against Khamzat Chimaev. I made a lot of wrestling mistakes. And so I want to come back a year later and show everybody that my wrestling has improved, that I went back to the drawing board. I said, I need to really make some efforts and improvements in this particular part of my game, and I'm going to come back and show that against a very seasoned wrestler. Now, Kamaru's knees, are not the same.
Sure.
He doesn't move as well as he used to, but make no mistake about it. He gave Khamzat Chimaev potentially his worst fight in the UFC, maybe next to the Sean Strickland fight that just happened, and had that one gone 5 rounds, a lot of people think that might have gone Kamaru's way.
Sure.
So, really good main event. About a 2.5 to 1 favorite is Dricus du Plessis. And guys, by the way, I will get into every single fight on the card, including the prelims with Moneyball. We're doing our Thursday live stream tomorrow at 7 p.m. Central. So make sure you come back to that if you want to hear all the picks and a deeper dive on the main event. That will be tomorrow, 7 p.m. Central. It'll go for about an hour, hour and a half. But, what I'm thinking is, as far as this main event, firepower of DDP, strength, explosiveness. Kamaru said when they sparred together about 2.5 years ago, that his power's real. He was man, I felt that power. He's unorthodox, but damn, does he hit hard. And just without burying the lead here, I'm going to pick DDP to win this fight. I think there's too many ways to win. I do think Kamaru can wrestle, but I think he's going to be a bit undersized coming up to 185. DDP always looked like a light heavyweight to me, even though he makes the weight limit. I don't think Kamaru is going to be able to ragdoll him like Chimaev did. 1, because of the size difference. 2, because of Kamaru's age and his knees. And 3, because I do think that DDP's telling the truth when he says I've gone and made some improvements in my wrestling. So I just see more ways to win for Dricus. I see maybe durability being an issue for Kamaru. My final call is going to be a late stoppage, like 4th round TKO. Kamaru's tough as hell. He looked really good against Joaquin Buckley. He proved to us that he's not completely done yet, but Dricus du Plessis is a young and very recently removed champion.
Yeah.
It was just less than a year ago that he lost his belt. So I like Dricus in this fight. I think he's got more ways to win, and I think he finds a late technical knockout.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I've been missing Dricus du Plessis.
Me too.
Still Knox is one of my favorite guys on the roster, and his fight style is so unique. He's an awkward guy to deal with. Kamaru Usman's going to have his hands full, but I do look at the common opponents, right? And we've got 2 that we can look at. So Sean Strickland, Kamaru Usman beat him. Now DDP also beat him, but it was a little bit more controversial, right? And the
first one at least.
Yeah. And the Kamaru Usman was years before. And then Khamzat Chimaev, that's the bigger one. Kamaru Usman took on Khamzat Chimaev on very short notice, and it was a 3-round fight, but he gave Khamzat everything he could handle and then some, and he had a much better showing against Khamzat than DDP did. DDP famously was held down and controlled for like 23 of the 25 minutes.
Like 7,000 strikes to the face.
Yeah.
Like probably 7 of them were significant, but just not an optically pleasing fight and an embarrassing one for Dricus.
Right. And I think that, styles make fights. So Dricus obviously had a big hole in his game. Khamzat was able to expose it and just come out on top in the most dominant way possible. But I don't think that the MMA math fully adds up here, because Dricus du Plessis is a very big, strong, unit of a man. And Khamzat Chimaev has the wrestling skills and the speed to get into a dominant position. And then he's got the ability and the strength to stay in that top position. And we saw that for the entire 25 minutes against DDP. Kamaru Usman is not the young guy that Khamzat is. He's not quite as fast. And obviously he's going to be a little bit quicker than maybe most middleweights that Dricus is used to fighting. But again, his knees are an issue. They're always questionable. And so I don't think he's going to have the grappling success or anywhere close that Khamzat had. I think DDP will be able to at least get back to his feet if Kamaru is able to take him down. But I realistically see this fight taking place primarily on the feet. And Kamaru is very right to say that the power that DDP possesses is very real. But I'll just add to that, the shots that hurt the most are always the shots that you just don't see coming. And it feels like everything DDP throws is a shot you don't see coming because he steps weird. He has a very awkward, like drunken master style, but somehow it's wildly effective enough for him to become the world champion. And so I think Kamaru Usman is going to have to, stick to a disciplined game plan if he wants to have success on the feet. And he's going to have to, stick and move. He cannot be willing to get into a fire exchange with DDP because again, that's where the weird stuff comes out. And sometimes DDP winds up flat on his back when he tries something, a technique that may be a little bit more tricky or difficult to land. But he always finds a way to make whatever it is that happens, whether it's good or bad for him, he finds a way to make it work. Yeah. So I can't wait to see how this one goes down. I think OKC is getting blessed with a really good main event, and Dricus du Plessis has a clear path back to the title now that Khamzat is no longer the champion, because obviously he has the fights with Sean Strickland. He has, there's other opponents at the top of 185, and it feels to me like Khamzat Chimaev's days at 185 are numbered, if not already over. I could see him going to 205 and finishing out his career there, and maybe even heavyweight, but I'm not bullish on that. But I think Dricus du Plessis, being the star that he is, the unique guy, looks like $1 million, fights differently than almost anybody. He's a guy that the UFC can get behind and try to really bring up. South Africa is not the most represented country for the UFC, but I'm sure they would love to get some more attention down there. Yeah. And Dricus du Plessis in another title fight at some point would be a lot of fun. So I'm going Dricus du Plessis. I kind of am leaning towards the same way as you, that he's going to get a late finish, but I'm just going to throw one weird thing at you. I think Dricus du Plessis is going to try some offensive wrestling this fight, because he's like, damn, if Khamzat can hold me down and do that to me, what if I get on top of somebody? Maybe they can't get out from under me. And if he can hold a guy, a former champion like Kamaru, down the same way that Khamzat held him down, we could see a lot of people change their mind very quickly on DDP's grappling skills, which as of right now people are saying are non-existent, which isn't the case. No, it's just the fact that Khamzat Chimaev was the one leading the dance in that situation, and he had no real chance. But if he's righted the wrongs that he showed in the Khamzat title fight, then I think he's going to have a very good return back to title implications.
So your final call is what, late TKO?
I'm going to go third round TKO for Dricus du Plessis, but don't be surprised if he finds some sort of submission.
There we go. Guys, thank you so much for watching this episode. As I said just a few minutes ago, please come back tomorrow, 7 p.m. Central. Moneyball MMA and myself will be going live giving predictions and picks for every single fight, including the prelims for UFC OKC. See what I did there?
Yeah.
And guys, also as well, we will have some immediate recap videos coming out, probably live stream as well, after the event on Saturday night. So make sure you tune in for that. And until then, have a wonderful week.
Peace.